Imagine the following scene. You are facing a person who raises the voice, argues aggressively, tries to manipulate or despise. Inside, everything boils the desire to scream back, to prove that it is right. To crush the other with arguments is almost irresistible, but you remain silent, not for weakness, but because it knows that there is a single question capable of silencing the interlocutor more efficiently than any scream. A question that will not defeat him, but will make him see his own fragility. In this content, I will show you how to neutralize any conflict without fights, without aggression, using only the strength of reason, a strategy that Stoic philosophers dominated and can transform their way of dealing with confrontations forever. Every disagreement, every heated discussion or provocation as a common point, people do not seek the truth, seek victory. No matter who is right, it matters who seems to be right. That's where most are lost. They fall into the trap, scream, justify themselves, argue even exhaustion, try to overcome someone who did not come in search of a dialogue but validation, and so always defeated. Who dominates the art of serenity acts differently. It does not respond to the scream with another cry, does not enter the battle of egos. Instead, it takes a step back and notes the words, but the intention behind them, because the truth is not what sounds louder, it is what remains when the noise ceases. It is in the silence that the right question is born. It is not made to win, but to clarify. One question that makes the other see that in reality he is not attacking you, but running away from himself. This is the key moment. You do not lower anyone. You simply rise above the situation. As Marco Aurelio said, the best revenge is not to become the same as the offender. Stoicism teaches not fighting people, but to see the essence of what is happening. Those who scream do not do it by force, but for fear of losing control, respect, or self-image. The higher it shines, the more you try to convince yourself, not to you. Therefore, discussing is a dead end. You can't beat those who are at war with yourself, but you can hold a mirror before him. The question is simple, calmly, without accusation. Why are you saying this now? Just that, without irony, without defense, without judgment, just a genuine question. The other is disconcerted for a moment, because his usual strategy is interrupted. He expected an aggressive replica and passionate justification, but receives an invitation to reflection. You pull him, metaphorically, behind the back, taking him out of the whirlwind of emotions and putting it in the face of reality. It is at this moment that the awakening begins. Not always immediate, but always deep. When you ask, why are you saying this? Are you not humiliating? It is reconnecting the person with one's own conscience. Most acts on automatic, repeat patterns, shouts because it's easier, attacks because you don't know how to do it differently. You are not the enemy. It's just those around when the other's inner bomb exploded. The sage understands that it does not have to be lightning of the conflicts of others, but it can be an anchor, silent and unshakable. The power of this question is not to silence the other, but to reveal the origin of his pain. Sometimes the person goes out and leaves, others explode even more, but you are no longer in the scheme. It is above. Your tranquility is not weakness, it is mastery. It is power over yourself that no conflict can take. As Simon Sinek said, courage is not to throw himself into battle, but remain serene when everyone loses reason. You are not fighting, it is directing. This question may vary according to the situation. It can be, what do you really want to achieve with it? Or for you, is it more important to be right or understand? Each of these phrases is an anchor to the mind because it introduces a break, a space to think. If the person is minimally open to honest dialogue, he will end up for a second, for a minute, because the truth requires silence. What matters is not the words you choose, but the intention behind them. If talking moved by irritation, you have already lost. If you talk about calm, you are guiding. Those who practice serenity always speak from a broad view. It does not defend the ego, defends clarity. You are like a rock against which they throw stones. They ricochet, and the more quiet you remain, the higher the aggressiveness of other sounds. People hear themselves and can't stand what they hear. Therefore, questions like this, you impose nothing. It just shows a reflection. But to ask this question without wavering, you need to be prepared internally, because sometimes the answer will be even more poisonous. Then your ability to remain silent will be tested. You don't have to react. You don't have to save each other from yourself. Just get firm, like a tree in the storm. You already understood. There is no enemy in front of you, but someone wounded, who does not know how to deal with your own fragility. And you know, do not combat this fragility. Let her manifest and then move on. It's not a defeat, it's the highest level of respect for yourself. Who dominates this art does not spend energy in unnecessary battles. You know when it's worth talking and when it's better to shut up. If the person is closed, aggressive, deaf, you do not need to save it. Your mission is not to give lessons. Your silence is already a lesson. As Epictetus wrote, some people do not deserve their words, they deserve their silence. And you choose what to offer. Remember, when you talk to someone, you are not talking to your words, but with your pains, fears, and ambitions. If you want to see the person behind the mask, look beyond what is said. Often the attack is not against you, but against a shadow, a projection. When someone shouts, "You don't respect me," in fact, you're saying you don't respect yourself. When you accuse you of selfishness, you may be talking about your own void. You see that. It does not defend itself. Just ask, calmly, what makes you think like that? This question returns the responsibility. Don't let the person hide behind emotions. It requires facts, essence, truth. Then, either she is forced to reflect or retreat. But you stay in the center, serene and safe. And it is in the center that resides its true power. Stoicism teaches not to run through the battlefield, but to remain in its inner fortress. This fortress is your conscience. You don't just see the conflict, but what's behind it, and who controls himself controls the situation. It's impressive how a single quiet question can dismantle a storm. People arrive full of anger, with ready accusations, mentally rehearse dozens of dialogues. They have already imagined their answers, their defenses, their counterattacks. But you just look and ask, do you want to understand or just need to discharge your frustration? This question breaks the script. Turn off the prefabricated script. The person realizes that he has come prepared for a fight, but you are there, without armor and without fear. That disarms it. You do not feed the discussion or enter the provocation. Just hold a mirror, and in this mirror, she sees herself as she would not like to be. But you don't judge, just refuses to play. As the Stoics said, you are not required to react to anyone who tries to drag it into chaos. Your peace is your greatest weapon. When someone throws a stone into you, it is not a weakness not to retaliate. It is a choice. You decide if you enter the battle or move on. You are not required to win the discussion. He is obliged to remain at peace with himself, because in the end this is the only victory that matters. True strength is not in crushing, but in revealing, not to impose, but to suggest, not to prove, but to give the other the chance to see for yourself. Thus they act the most powerful words. They do not scream, whisper in silence. And if the person is ready, he will hear. A question like, what do you really mean by that? It may sound smooth, but cut like a blade because it exposes the essence, stripping the intention behind the words. At this point, your interlocutor has two ways. Either recognizes your own aggressiveness and shuts up, or insists on it, but now no longer against you, but against yourself. Meanwhile, you stay there, serene, not moving away, but not consuming either. This is the essence of Stoicism, the ability to be in the eye of the hurricane without losing itself, without becoming what attacks it, even when provoked. Because you know, if you keep calm, not only controls yourself, but also the reality around you. In a world where everyone screams, silence is a force. And there is a crucial detail in this. When you ask these questions, it's not to humiliate or get someone in contradiction. No, it is manipulation. It is an invitation to consciousness. You offer the other the chance to get out of the script that has dominated you for years. Yes, not everyone will be ready to accept it. Some will close, others will be even more annoyed. But be honest, you don't do it for them. It does for itself, not to remain in fact, not to stroke, to preserve its inner height. The real force is not to overcome everyone, but not allowing anyone to destroy their peace. As Carl Jung said, what irritates us in others can lead us to understand ourselves. But you already understand yourself. That's why you don't get annoyed. You see the root. And who sees the root does not play games, he actually lives. Even in the midst of the conflict, it remains you, without masks, without papers, just you. In the heat of the discussion, there is always a choice, react or understand. And this choice defines not only the outcome of the conversation, but its own growth. Each time you contain yourself and avoid responding with aspects, you are strengthening a different force, the force of being higher, no longer, to observe, not to defend itself. You are like a sculptor who removes the superfluous to reach the essence. When, in a conversation, you ask a question like, why are you saying that exactly? Or what do you expect me to feel this phrase? It's lighting a flashlight in the dark. Either the person overshadows with the light, or begins to see. And even if you overshadow, you don't lose anything because you didn't dive into her darkness, remained in the light. He remained with himself. Stoic is not one who never gets annoyed, but the one who is not lost in the irritation of others. Therefore, it is always one step ahead. Some confuse calm with indifference. They think, if you don't scream back, it's because you don't care. But this is a mistake of those who are used to the drama. In fact, Your silence speaks louder than any word. In it there is strength, security, maturity. When you ask instead of arguing, you are not moving away, you are raising the level of consciousness. It's saying, I'm not here to prove anything. I'm here to understand. And this is rare. It makes the other stop, reflect, because most are used to fighting, and you don't fight. You watch, give a chance, support the space. This is the essence of Stoicism. It is not about repressing emotions, but not being a slave. You may feel irritation, anger, tiredness, but it doesn't act from them, acts from depth. And that is another level. It is not a reaction, it is position. Those who have position always have advantage, because they have already chosen who will be, regardless of the circumstances. Have you noticed how many conflicts end up? Two people scream, argue, interrupt, run out, and in the end nothing is resolved. None heard the other. None approached the truth. All because no one asked the right question. One question is a door. A discussion is a wall. You choose what to build. When you say, what are you really feeling now? It plays not in words, but in emotion. And that's where it all starts. The person may not understand immediately, may even get annoyed, but then slow down because for the first time in a long time someone is not fighting it, but trying to understand it. Stoic does not seek confrontation, seek clarity. Do not fear difficult conversations, but always maintains distance with each other and the drama of others. It is like a doctor who sees the disease, but is not contaminated by it. You look at the person and don't judge. Just ask a question that removes the mask. And it is often at this moment that healing begins. Fear, expectation, frustration. Stoic does not react to them. It does not throw itself on impulsive answers. He sees, and that is already power, because seeing is the first step in mastering the situation. At these times, you can ask one of the most powerful questions that exist. What do you want me to understand? That it disarms. This becomes the game of the conversation inside out. The person stops throwing his emotions out and begins to seek meaning within herself. Where before there were only accusations, a dialogue arises. Stoic does not want to win the discussion. He wants to clarify, to find a point of support not in words, but in fact. And if this truth doesn't matter to the other, it retreats, not out of fear, but out of respect for yourself. Because not every door needs to be opened. Not every dialogue needs to continue. Not every voice needs to be heard. You give a chance, just one. If she does not enjoy move on. In silence, calmly, with dignity. You are not required to be convenient. It is not required to soften everything. Stoic is not the one who smiles all the time. It is the one who is always firm in his principles. If the situation requires, it can be hard but never cruel. It can be straightforward but never humiliating. The force is not flexible. It is a need. Sometimes you ask a question not to awaken the other, but to mark a limit. Do you think you can talk to me in this tone? Or do you want a dialogue or monologue? These phrases are like a bucket of cold water. They are not aggressive. They are not attacks. They are final points. If the person does not hear, you do not raise the voice. You move away, change the subject, or take a break, because your goal is not to win. It is to remain clear. As Seneca said, when you are angry, you are renting your mind to the first to pass. But you don't rent. You own yourself, owners of your words, your life. So asks, instead of arguing, and already wins. People feel the strength, even without understanding where it comes from. When you speak calmly, safely, without the need to convince anyone, it conveys another level of presence. It does not argue, because it does not need approval. It is not justified, because it has nothing to prove. And when you ask a simple question, what do you expect from me now? You take the role of target from yourself. Refuses to participate in the emotional drama. The person may not understand immediately. You may even try to press more, but deep down, he realizes that he is facing a different interlocutor, someone who does not tremble at the conflict, who does not dissolve on the screen, who sees the essence even when it is hidden behind the aggression. And there is true power. You don't let yourself be carried away. Not in the sense of mastering, but of guiding. He speaks little, but accurately. It does not raise the voice, but raises the level of the conversation. And with that, it raises not only yourself, but also who is around you. In a world where everyone goes to prove that they are right, knowing how to ask the right question is a rare gift. You don't want to be right, you want clarity. And in that resides his strength. A single calm question can dissipate the fog of resentment, misunderstandings, and suspicions. It is like a ray of light, narrow, but deep. What do you really want me to understand? This question does not accuse, does not defend itself, does not argue. She reveals. And whoever asks this kind of question is already above the conflict, because it has not come into it, it has left. Stoic knows how to leave before entering. See in advance when the conversation will degrade and put a limit, not rigidity, not with attack, but with respect to yourself. You do not cut, you point. And if the person insists on the fight, you are not required to be their. Your task is to maintain consciousness, and consciousness is choice. It's not emotion. It's not a reflection. It's not a habit. It is a deliberate step, and you take it because true strength is not in controlling others, but in controlling yourself. You can spend your studying psychology, taking communication courses, reading manipulation books, but one skill will be worth more than all this, knowing how to ask the right question at the right time. It is not technical. It is a state of mind. It is having an unshakable internal core, because the question only works when it comes from silence, from that inner silence without fear, without the need to prove anything. The question is not a weapon to win. It is a tool to stop and sometimes to save yourself from unnecessary conflicts, empty conversations. What only pulls down. Stoic does not spend energy for nothing. It does not fight on all fronts. Choose where to be and, above all, choose who to be. You can say, I don't want to continue this conversation in that tone. This is also a question to the other, for the situation, for yourself. And if you say that not with irritation, but firmly, everything changes. Because the real maturity is knowing how to put an end point without screaming, leaving without knocking the door, staying without burning. When you become really strong, you no longer need to prove it with words, screams, or victories in discussions, because he found that the real victory is to remain at peace when there is war around, not to get lost when they try to overthrow it, to maintain dignity even when they tease. And if you learn to ask questions instead of attacking, you have already become another. It is no longer part of the crowd. It is no longer a participant in the noise. It is an observer, a thinker, an internal leader. It is not easy. There are times when the will is to explode, scream, prove your point, but it is precisely at these times that it must remember a question may be more powerful than 1,000 arguments. And when you do it, you are governing, and who rules is ruled, governs your world. May your words be rare, but right. May your silences be higher than the screams of others, and that in any storm you remain an anchor, because strength is not volume, it is clarity, and you have already found it.